The shack stood like a broken tooth at the edge of the prairie, its boards warped from storms, its roof sagged beneath the weight of years. John Woods pressed his palm against the splintered frame as the last call of the auctioneer died in the dusty yard behind him. 15 cents had been enough to claim it. 15 cents and a silence thick with laughter from the men who called themselves ranchers, their coin purses fat, their boots polished with pride. They had jeered as if his hunger were comedy, as if owning even ruin were beyond his reach. Sheriff Barrow's chuckle had cut sharper than any blade, slow and oily, the kind that left stains on a man's soul. The prairie wind shifted, carrying wood smoke and the smell of distant rain. John tugged his coat tighter, the coin that had bought his shelter no heavier than the emptiness in his pockets. His mule snorted, tired eyes blinking at the shack. The sun slipped lower, painting the horizon in bruised gold. He stepped inside. The air was stale, laced with mouse droppings and rot. Dust rose in little storms where his boots disturbed the silence. A lantern, borrowed from the edge of town, trembled in his grip. He set it on a crooked shelf and watched the flame catch the shadows. Nothing but broken chairs, a rusted stove, and silence thick enough to choke. Still he walked the floorboards slow, each creak speaking of years where no soul had dared to tread. Then came the sound, faint, almost imagined, a metallic clink beneath his heel. John froze, his breath shallow, heart knocking in his chest like a warning drum. He crouched, ran his palm over the warped wood, felt the hollow echo beneath. The lantern light flickered as if leaning in. His hands found a loose board. He pried it up. The smell hit first, iron and dust. Beneath the floor sat a strongbox, edges black with rust, and beside it, a satchel tied with ribbon now stiff with time. John pulled them into the open. His fingers trembled not from fear but from the gravity that clung to them. The strongbox cracked open with a reluctant groan. Inside lay coins, gold, stacked and gleaming despite their years, their weight undeniable. But it was the satchel that drew his hand, the ribbon snapping brittle between his fingers. Letters spilled across the floor like dried leaves. The sheriff's name marked them, scrawled in ink faded but legible. John's eyes narrowed. Words of deals, names of men silenced, payoffs for raids disguised as outlaw bloodshed. His chest burned as he read, for among the dates was one he carried like a wound, the night his brother had been gunned down on a lonely trail, called Bandits by the law. Here it was, in ink, a hired job ordered by Sheriff Barrow himself. John sat back, the lantern's flame painting his jaw in hard lines. The shack groaned around him, as if it too had borne the weight of silence long enough. He tucked the letters into his coat, the gold untouched on the floor. He did not know yet what he would do, only that he held in his hands the truth no one had dared speak. The next day, the prairie stretched pale and merciless under the sun. John had begun clearing the shack when footsteps approached. He turned, hand brushing the revolver at his hip, but it was only Mary Whitley. She carried a basket, her dress faded, her posture upright despite the heaviness in her eyes. She was younger than her weariness, 27 maybe, her hair drawn back with the precision of someone who could not afford untidiness. She offered the bread and dried apples without a word. John studied her, then nodded, setting the basket on the table. She lingered, eyes flicking to the lantern, then to the floorboards that had been disturbed. John felt her curiosity like a draft in the room. He did not speak of what he had found. Instead, he pulled out a chair. She sat, hands folded in her lap, gaze steady on the flame. They spoke little, yet the silence carried a kind of recognition. Two souls bound by a sheriff's shadow, though neither named it. That night, the wind rose, rattling the shack's bones. John lay awake, the letters against his chest. He thought of his brother's laughter, now years buried, and of Mary's quiet strength as she faced him without fear. He thought of the sheriff's eyes at the auction, how their mockery had not hidden the flicker of unease. By morning, Barrow's horse circled slow past the shack. The sheriff tipped his hat, his smile curved like a noose. John stood in the doorway, hand on the frame, Mary watching from inside. The message was clear, he knew. He always knew. That evening, rain came hard, drumming the roof. Mary returned, her dress dark at the hem. She sat by the fire, her voice low. She told him of her fiancé, vanished after he spoke against the sheriff. She told him of children in her school who asked where their fathers had gone, and of mothers who wept at night but never spoke aloud. The sheriff owned the deputies, the judge, even the preacher's silence. To stand against him was to vanish. John listened, the revolver heavy in his hand. He opened the satchel, placed one letter before her. She read, lips pressing thin, hands trembling as she returned it to him. "You can't," she whispered. "He'll kill you." John's eyes burned steady. "Maybe," he said. He folded the letter back, slow as prayer. "But he won't keep killing all of us." Later, by the dim glow of the fire, he showed her how to hold the revolver. Her hands were small, steady, her breath shallow as she aimed at the empty doorway. His hand brushed hers, firm but careful. She did not flinch. Outside, thunder rolled like drums of war. When the sheriff came, it was with fire. Lanterns bobbed in the night, shadows of men moving in the rain. They shouted for him to come out, called him a thief, a liar, a squatter unfit for the land. John stood by the window, Mary at his side, her jaw set. The shack rattled as torches struck the wood, flames licking the damp but hungry still. The roof groaned, smoke curling low. John overturned the strongbox, coins scattering across the floor like blood. He stood tall as the door burst wide, Sheriff Barrow filling the frame, pistol drawn, his grin wild. The letters flew from John's hand into his chest, parchment slapping against the damp of his coat. "Your own words," John said, voice low, steady. "Every name you silenced." The sheriff's face twisted, rage cracking through his smirk. He raised his gun. Before he could fire, a shot split the smoke. Mary's hand still steady on the revolver, the sheriff staggered back, blood blooming across his sleeve. Chaos surged. The men outside shouted, their courage faltering as their leader stumbled. John fired then, driving them back into the rain. Flames roared, beams collapsed. The shack screamed as it died, timbers falling into ash. By dawn, the fire was embers. The townsfolk gathered, drawn by smoke and gunfire. They found John and Mary standing in the ruins, soot-streaked, eyes hollow but unbroken. In John's hand lay the satchel, smoke-stained but intact. He pressed it into the judge's grip, the words within now the weight of judgment. The whispers spread like wildfire, voices rising where silence had ruled. Mary stood beside him, her fingers brushing his as the wind carried the last of the smoke into the pale sky. The gold was gone, swallowed by the fire, but the truth remained, heavier than any coin. John did not look back at the ruins. He felt the shift, quiet but certain. The sheriff would not hold the town in silence again. Yet as the crowd parted, as eyes turned from ruin to hope, John saw Barrow's blood on the ground leading into the brush, a trail unended. The man had not died. Somewhere in the shadows of the prairie, the sheriff still breathed. John's jaw tightened. His fingers curled around Mary's hand, and the shack's ashes whispered the truth. Secrets were never finished, only buried until someone desperate enough to dig them up. The horizon glowed with morning, but John knew the night was not done.